All right, what's up, everyone? That's a hard act to follow, man. Here, just one logistical note, folks. I'm going to be showing a series of slides here. I have approximately 200 slides, and each one takes about 10 minutes. So we're going to be here all night, folks, so get comfortable. No, on a serious tip, it's all going to be slides. It's going to be like this for the most part, and I'm just letting the folks in the back know you may want to move up front. Whatever's cool with me, I don't mind either way, but it might just be easier to read and see some of these slides. Again, so my name is Rick Urrutia, and just wanted to introduce myself, although Brian already did a good chunk of that. I've been researching for unions and social justice movements for about 25 years now. I started in Detroit, giving lessons on how to research information for environmental justice campaigns. And then a few years later, just like Brian, I found myself at the University of Massachusetts Labor Studies Center. And that's where we were taught how to research corporations. And I'm, of course, going to get into all of that. But first, I wanted to kind of set the tone a little bit and let y'all know, what inspires me? Like, why am I here? Why am I talking to y'all? And I have a list in front of me right here, and I am going to be referring to my notes. I hope people are cool with that, because otherwise it's just a messy talk without looking at my notes. So what are some of the things that inspire me? Honestly, I don't have to reach very far. It's stuff that y'all have done. It's stuff that the U.S. working class has done. It's stuff that the international working class has done. In the U.S., I have to point at things like the Seattle General Strike of 1919. There you go. Yes, by all means. Seattle General Strike of 1919, where workers went on general strike in Seattle and created, it was so powerful, they created an alternative government that ran the strike and kept production going in critical areas, like feeding people, like making sure that sanitation kept happening during this time. That took some organization, of course, and that's what the workers did. And so much organization that the city had to negotiate with them, and the city had to sit down with the strikers and negotiate with them. I'm inspired by the railway strike of 1877, which kind of the same deal. There were strikes all over the place in the railways in 1877. So that was the main arteries. Those were the main arteries back in the day in 1877. So for workers to go on general strike across the railway system, that's a huge deal. That's a huge, huge deal. And not only did they go on strike, but they started managing production. That's a huge deal, and that's a lesson for us to learn today. And that's something to strive for. Another thing that inspires me, the Minneapolis General Strike of 1934, the formation of the United Auto Workers in the 30s. That in particular, I need to give a little context to that, because I found myself talking about that earlier today and started getting excited about that again today. The United Auto Workers, man, they were forming, and one of the biggest obstacles towards organizing the United Auto Workers was the racial tension within the shops, right? White workers didn't want to work next to black workers, right? And so it wasn't until the Communist Party came along and said, nope. If y'all want to organize a union, y'all need to have interracial solidarity. Y'all are not going to make this happen unless you bond with black workers and white workers and struggle together. Now, let's give that a little context. Let's give that a little more context, because that by itself is powerful. But this is the Jim Crow era. This is the Jim Crow era. This is an era where there's whites-only communities. This is an era where there's whites-only jobs. That is a bold move. That's a revolutionary move, and I think that's what today is calling for right now, moves like that, some bold things. So when I get up here and I talk about international solidarity, it shouldn't seem so impossible, so intangible, so dreamlike. No, that's where we're at. As I was saying a little earlier today, I was interviewed on the radio by Alan Ruff, who's in the audience too. So when we say that, we have to make it tangible. We have to make that real. Capitalism was globalized a long time ago. And so the workers' struggle needs to be organized at an international level. All right? This isn't crazy talk. You know, I mean, here, check this out. Let's talk about this microphone here for a second. Can someone here, and there's no wrong answer really, but can someone here tell me what labor went into creating this microphone? Anyone? Raise your hand.
Chinese labor.
Chinese labor? Okay, go on. What else? Go for it.
Extracted mining.
Thank you. Extracted mining. That's right. What else? I'll tell you this. Let me help you guys out. There's metals in here. There's magnets in here. There's rubber in here. There are plastics in here. There's maybe copper wire running out of here. I'm trying to help you all out. What work went into creating this microphone? Go for it.
Work from many different laborers from many different countries, and through a socialized process, hands of many.
There you go. That's essentially the answer, right? Like everything from the mining that went into taking out the steel, the iron ore that went into the metal parts of this, to the plastics, right? The petroleum, extracting petroleum to make the plastic products, maybe some paint. You know, and not only that, but here is the microphone in front of my face right now at the labor temple. What did it take to get it here? You know, someone had to put it in a box. Someone had to put a label on the box letting you know it's a microphone. Someone had to put that box on the shelf of, what, a music store, something like that? All right, someone had to drive it to that music store. Someone had to fuel the truck that drove it to the music store. Right? So there's all sorts of labor that went into putting this microphone in front of my face right now, including Chinese labor, of course. You know, labor from around I mean, this microphone has essentially been touched by workers from around the world. You know? So that's why I'm saying, it's like, this day and age, you know, this whole tired old tactic of buy American, buy American, buy American, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. We need to think bigger than that. We need to think bigger than that. We need to think bigger than that, and that's part of the reason for this presentation. Another thing we have to think bigger than is this whole lesser of two evils stuff. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. Get over it. Get over it. It does not work. That's why we are here. That's why we have imposters like Elon Musk in the White House running. It doesn't work, and it hasn't worked. I am sorry. So that's part of why I'm doing this presentation, because I want us to have a bigger vision than that, and I want us to understand who we are up against. All right? Another thing that inspires me, the UPS strike of 1997. Who remembers that one? There you go. There you go. There you go. That was really inspiring. That was really inspiring. That was 1997. That was what, like almost 20 years, not quite 20 years, but maybe 15 years after the PATCO strike. Who remembers the PATCO strike? Right? Folks, if you're not familiar with the PATCO strike, get familiar with the PATCO strike. That's when Ronald Reagan fired what, like 11,000 aviation workers, air traffic control workers, thank you. Yeah, fired 10,000 all in one sweep. Why? He wanted to put out a message to corporate America letting them know that it was okay to play hardball with the unions. And since then, we've had a hard time. And so that 1997 UPS strike, that was a big deal. That was a big deal. All right, but did we sustain that momentum? No. That's okay. That's okay. That's why we're here today. That's why we're here today, to think bigger and figure some stuff out. Another thing that inspired me greatly, actually, as Brian mentioned, we have a podcast, and it's called We Rise Fighting Labor Podcast. And we interview labor leaders. We interview union members. We interview strikers in particular. We're always interested in interviewing strikers. And a couple of years ago, we had one of the strikers from the Graduate Employees Organization in Ann Arbor, Michigan. They were on strike. And one of the things that inspired me about them is that they had figured some stuff out. They had all these people on strike and were able to feed them. And I think those are the types of lessons that we have to take careful note of, real careful note of. How do workers survive during strikes? What do they do? You know, how do they sustain their power? I think we have to take careful note of that. The final thing that I'm going to mention that has really inspired me and just wanted to share with you, although I'm sure, you know, I could add a lot to this list. The final thing that inspired me greatly, and this is probably the movement that has inspired me the greatest here in the US at least, is DRUM, the Dodge Revolutionary Union Movement. Is anyone familiar with DRUM? No? No? The Black Workers League? Let's hear a little louder. All right. If you are not familiar with DRUM and the Black Workers League, I highly suggest you get familiar with it. I highly recommend a movie called Finally Got the News. Finally Got the News. Yep. Write it down. I see some of y'all writing that down. Yeah, write that one down. That's a great movie. That's a documentary. It's available on YouTube for free. Just go ahead and YouTube it. Finally Got the News. It's actual footage of a black workers movement within the United Auto Workers, so that black workers within the United Auto Workers actually have a voice and have power within their own union. So it's a fascinating movie, and I think one of my biggest takeaways from that movie is at one point, one of the union members comes out and says, you know, hey man, we're not looking to become the new exploiters. We're not trying to replace the white exploiters with black exploiters. We are looking to end exploitation altogether. And I think that's key to what we're trying to do these days. All right, now let me tell you something about myself personally a little bit as to, you know, where I'm coming from and who I am and all that. So Brian and I, we went to school at the University of Massachusetts, 2002 to 2003, 2002 to 2004 for myself. Brian went from 2003 to 2005, I believe. And we were taught how to research corporations. And we were taught how to research corporations at a time when the Change to Win Federation was starting to form. It started off as the New Unity Partnership, but it ended up being the Change to Win Coalition. Do people here remember the Change to Win Coalition? Are people familiar with how that happened? You know what, let me just break it down for y'all. So basically what happened around, you know, the year 2000, 2002, was that some labor leaders, such as Andy Stern from SEIU, Bruce Rayner from Unite, Jimmy Hoffa from Teamsters, you know, they put out a bold critique of the AFL-CIO. They basically said, you know, this hot shop organizing, where we just run around trying to put out fires and organize workers who are just pissed off, that's not working. That's why our numbers are declining. And so Andy Stern, Bruce Rayner, Jimmy Hoffa, whoever the president of the United Food and Commercial Workers was at that point, you know, they came up with this plan. They came up with this plan to build, to say, density is destiny. So the basic idea was to create union density. In other words, organize from wall to wall in certain industries, in certain sectors. They had targeted Sodexo, they had targeted Walmart, they had targeted Cintas, and they said, you know, moving forward, we're not gonna do any hot shop organizing. We're just gonna organize across these corporations from wall to wall. We're gonna put workers under master contracts, and we're gonna take wages out of competition. All right, this was around 2002 to 2003, 2004, right around then. And these labor leaders broke away from the AFL-CIO and created another federation altogether called Change to Win. And you know, they decided to pursue this strategy. And well, I have to ask you, is Walmart organized? Is all of Sodexo organized? Is all of Cintas organized? No, no, it didn't work. I'm sorry. If anything, union density has dropped altogether throughout the nation since then. You know, so this bold new plan did not work. But nevertheless, the reason I bring that up is because that is the time, that is the context under which Brian and I were taught how to research corporations. Because a lot of research would have to go into that sort of organizing. You know, you would have to know the employer really well. You would have to know the employer's method of production really well. You would have to know the employer's profits, the employer's revenues, the directors, the method of production, the facilities, where they're located. You know, you would have to know stuff like that. You would have to know about the workforce. Is it unionized? Is it not unionized? You know, that's the sort of information that we were taught to find out. We were also taught to find the soft underbellies of corporations, the weak spots, the jugulars. We were taught to find that. We were taught to find that so we could put pressure on the corporations so the corporations would recognize the unions and sit down and negotiate a good contract with them. Because otherwise, we're going to research this information and we're going to put it out there and build pressure on you through the media, in the shop floor, through political action. So that's what all this research was supposedly geared towards. And on my end, I moved to Colorado in 2005, and I got a job with a nonprofit. Really the job was with the Service Employees Union. But the nonprofit was called FRESC, and I say it was really with the Service Employees Union because Service Employees Union paid for like 80% of my salary. So I prefer to say that I was working for SEIU at that time. And my job was to provide research for a campaign that SEIU had to organize Boulder County workers, so the municipal workers for Boulder County. And for those of you who aren't familiar, Boulder County is kind of like Madison here. It's kind of like Ann Arbor, it's known as this kind of like liberal haven, this kind of like college town liberal haven. And at that time, Boulder County was led by 3 county commissioners, all of them Democrats. All right, so you have this really liberal town with 3 Democratic commissioners. That's why SEIU targeted it. They thought it would be an easy win. Turns out it wasn't an easy win. Turns out they pretty much gave up without a fight. And turns out they couldn't, the leadership of SEIU, they couldn't even say union. They couldn't tell these commissioners that they wanted to organize a union. I'll never forget, this is 20 years later, I will never ever forget how the lead organizers in that campaign had backdoor meetings with the county commissioners telling them that they don't want a union. They want a workers' organization to work in cooperation with management. Yeah, y'all ready to join that? Yeah. Sounds like a great organization. Yeah, so I will never forget that. And mind you, I'm still putting this into context. Like, I had just gotten out of grad school and I had just been taught how to research and I had been taught how to find the weaknesses, the jugglers of these corporations. And you want to make a workers' organization to work in cooperation with management? Absolutely not. So, I wasn't exactly getting employee of the month back then because morale was kind of down when you hear stuff like that, But nevertheless, it taught me the lesson, and I was watching. I'm like, I see what y'all are doing. You want to organize these workers so you have more union dues, so you can pass them along to the Democrats, so the Democrats can pass more favorable labor legislation, so you can organize more workers, so you can collect more union dues, so you can pass it along to the Democrats, so the Democrat, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's essentially what I was researching for. And so to me, it felt really disheartening, really demoralizing, took the wind out of my sails. And so I started doing presentations like these about 20 years ago on how to research corporations. Because this is a skill that I think everyone should have. And certainly more than anyone, union members and workers looking to carry out direct action on the shop floor. And that's why I'm sharing this. Okay, so tonight we're going to talk about researching corporations. All right, I have spoken to a couple of you already, and you've shown interest in specific corporations. You've shown interest in private companies, and I am down. I'm down to come back and do more presentations just like this right here, or for your union, or for your community group. I hope you get something out of tonight, though, because tonight is going to be pretty broad and a good introduction, in my personal opinion. And so part of my research, going back to Boulder County for a second, part of my research for Boulder County included reading this book that talked about labor management partnerships in the public sector. All right, so labor management partnerships in government agencies. And one of the things that this book taught me was that anywhere where the workers were given a voice in a government agency, anywhere where the workers were given a voice and actually given power to change things in the workplace, anytime that happened, services became more efficient, okay? They were able to avoid layoffs, okay? And they got a better response. They got better reviews from the public for which they serve, okay? So I'm reading all of this and I'm asking myself, well, then why do we need the bosses? Why do we need the bosses then? What do they do? You know, like I'm learning about these worker management partnerships in the public sector, and they're teaching me that. I already told you all about Seattle and what happened there. You know, we already talked about the railway strike and what happened there. It's like, why do we need the bosses? You know, and I know that's a bold statement. I know that's a bold question, but I think y'all need to wrestle with that question if you haven't done so already. And in order to wrestle with that question and come out the other side with some hope, I think we need to connect some dots. I think we need to connect some dots, and that's why we're here today, to connect those dots. To connect those dots within these corporations, to connect those dots of production, you know, that will help us take on the employers, certainly, help us with strikes, certainly, but are also, I think, instrumental in us being able to formulate some kind of vision of a better world. You know, I think it helps us in believing that we can certainly build a new world from the shell of the old. So that's why I'm doing these presentations, because these are some good tools and everyone should have access to them. All right? So the research connects the dots. And all of the information that I'm going to talk about today is public information. There is nothing that you have to pay for. You don't have to pay a cent for any of this information. And it's the same information. It's the same exact information that's used by journalists. It's the same exact information that's being used by your union research department, if your union has a research department. It's the same exact information used by historians. It's the same exact information that's being used by academics. It is all public information. Y'all are welcome to use it. And all I can say to a corporation is good luck suing someone for trying to use public information, because it's not going to happen. You know, tonight you'll see we're taking information directly from the horse's mouth. We're getting this information directly from the corporations. So this isn't coming from the New York Times. This is not coming from Fox News. This isn't coming from Forbes. It's not coming from Business Week. It's not coming from a liberal publication, a conservative public. No, this is coming directly from the horse's mouth, which is part of what gives it its strength. You know, that way when you're sitting across a negotiating table from a corporation and they try to call you bluff on your information, you could say, hey, we got this off your website. All right, so that's where we're getting our information from. Now, just to kick things off and set the tone a little bit more, I'm going to ask y'all, tell me something. What is a union? Someone, anyone, tell me something. What is a union? All right, not all at once. What is a union?
Group of people in solidarity.
All right, Brother Tim at the front took away all my steam by giving away the correct answer. It's a group of workers. It's a group of workers. That's the best definition I've heard so far, and it's been with me for 25 years, and I've yet to come across a better definition of what a union is. A union is a group of workers, and I think that we need to also go back to that definition so we can get more creative in our strategies. All right? Listen, y'all, you know, we live in the US. We're in the belly of the beast. We are in the belly of the beast. All right, what happened in, was it 1947? Was 1947 the Taft-Hartley amendments? Yeah. People familiar with Taft-Hartley? Yeah. All right, so in case you're not familiar with this much of Taft-Hartley, Taft-Hartley makes a lot of things illegal. All right, with Taft-Hartley, you cannot go on wildcat strikes. You cannot call for jurisdictional strikes. You cannot go on political strikes. You can't do solidarity strikes. You can't do secondary boycotts, thanks to the Taft-Hartley Amendment. Okay, and that's been with us since 1947. All right, so I'm guessing most of the people in this room don't know a different world. Y'all don't know a different world. And why is all this stuff illegal? Let me ask you, with this, I know you know the answer to this one. Why is all this stuff illegal? Exactly, because it fucking works. Exactly, because it fucking works. And we need to go back to stuff like this, you know? And, you know, as Brian already mentioned, we have a podcast, and one of the things that I keep saying on the podcast, you know, it doesn't matter if something is legal or illegal for unions or not. It's not about that. It's not about whether something is legal or illegal. It's whether or not we can get away with it. All right? So I'm going to encourage you to think along these lines. A union is nothing more than a group of workers. Everything effective is illegal. And it's not about it being illegal. It's about us getting away with it. And for us to get away with it, we have to do a lot of planning. And we have to know the bosses really well. We have to know these corporations really well. The CEOs, the directors, the upper management, the shareholders. We need to know them, and all this information is out there. All this information is out there. You know, if not all the information you need, certainly a lot of information to get you started. And so that's what's happening today. And now I can actually get into the presentation and what I'm here to talk about. All right? So when we're researching corporations, one of the first places that I'm going to recommend that you go to is the investor relations page. People familiar with the investor relations page? Raise your hand if you know of the investor relations page. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hands? Okay, cool. All right, so the investor relations page is exactly as the name suggests. This is how corporations communicate information to their investors, to their shareholders. Excuse me. And so they offer a great deal of information. All right, so here, let's take a stroll through this now. And I'm going to turn to my computer for now so I can work with this. So all publicly traded corporations have an investor relations page. All right, so for example, Union Pacific, CSX, GEO, the for-profit prison, ExxonMobil, CoreCivic, the other for-profit prison, Raytheon, Boeing, Caterpillar, GM, Ford, Nestle, United, and so on and so on and so on. If it's publicly traded, if there are shares that investors can purchase and sell, they have an investor relations page with a great deal of information in it. And so that's going to be our first stop. Oh, look at that. I'm ahead of the game. All publicly traded corporations have an investor relations page, and all investor relations pages have the following documents and information. They have press releases from the corporation. They have information on officers and directors. They have stock information. They have financial documents. They have an annual report to shareholders. They have documents that they submit to the Security and Exchange Commission. The Security and Exchange Commission is the government agency that's in charge of keeping record of corporations. So they keep track of profits, they keep track of who the board of directors are, they keep track of a whole ton of things. And we're about to get into that. So we're going to go through some of these documents. All right, they have information on properties. Where are the different facilities for the corporation located? So that's a type of information that you'll find on the investor relations page. How do we get to the investor relations page? Easy. Y'all recognize this? Yeah. All right, y'all have seen this before, right? Google, google.com, simple enough. Boom, Amazon investor relations page, okay? So for tonight, I chose Amazon as an example, as a sample corporation that we can all look at. And I chose that corporation because I know everyone in this here room has heard of Amazon, right? Unless raise your hand if this is the first time you're hearing of Amazon. I didn't think so. Okay, so that's why I chose this corporation. And I also chose this corporation because it had all the documents that I always expect for a corporation to have in the investor relations page. All right, so I thought it was a great sample. And again, if you're looking for information on another corporation, just go to that corporation's investor relations page and look for some of the information that we're going to cover today, because it's out there. All right, so this strategy, this approach to researching works with any publicly traded corporation. So there it is, Amazon Investor Relations, all right? Takes us to the finds, whatever Google found. There it is at the very top, Amazon Investor Relations. This is what the website looks like. No big deal. But this is what it looks like, right? And here, let's do a little walkthrough. On the left there, you'll see some of the stuff that I already talked about, all right? They have the annual report. Okay, let me touch on that for a second. What is the annual report? The annual report is a publication that's written by the corporation to communicate with shareholders. It's usually 200 pages long. It has a great deal of information, a lot of narrative. We're going to look at some of the narrative here today. It has financial information and all the information, a lot of the information that I've already mentioned so far. All right, so that's at the top. So annual reports, proxies, the proxy statement, which we're also going to look at, and shareholder letters. All right. So let's actually kick it off with that. Let's kick it off with the annual reports. All right. So I had clicked over here on annual reports, brought me to this page, and if you look below, you can see that there's a few documents I can pick from. And I'm going to kick us off with the proxy statement. I thought it was the annual report, but I just finished putting these slides together 2 days ago, so I don't have them memorized. Sorry. So the first thing that we're going to look at is the proxy statement. All right? So this is actually what the proxy statement looks like. This is the very, very top of the proxy statement. And what does it contain? Proxy statement contains the time, date, and location of annual shareholders meetings. Now, I mention that because that's something that I actually picked up in grad school when I was being taught how to do this type of how to research this type of information. And why do you want the time, date, and location of annual shareholder meetings? Anyone? So you can protest them. So you can protest them. So you can also log in and watch and see what they're doing, see what they're talking about, see what they're planning, how it's going to affect you. So you can start developing some kind of strategy to counter the things that you don't like and make demands of the things that you need. That's why we want that information. It has information on directors. Why do we want information on directors?
So you know who's really running the company.
So you know who's really running the company. And also, I think because it serves as a great piece of agitational propaganda. You know, if you find out the directors, that the CEOs, upper level management is making, millions of dollars, and you're making $15 an hour, if that, that's a good piece of agitational propaganda. That's when you see some of those memes, some of those posts that talk about how a CEO makes 3,000 times what I make an hour. Yeah, that's why we want that information, and that's why we're about to dig into some of it. So we ourselves can come up with that information, so we don't have to wait for the nation to put it out, for Labor Notes to put it out. We ourselves can come up with this information. And again, where are we? We're in the Amazon Investor Relations page. If Amazon contests our information, what? This is your information. You may not like how we're presenting it, but this is all your information. Where's the lie? So that's why we want that information. And of course, as I just mentioned, information on executive compensation is part of the proxy statement. All right, so let's check it out. All right, this first page, it's like the one that we're looking at right now, this is usually 1 or 2 pages deep into the proxy statement, all right? So 1 or 2 pages deep into the proxy statement, you'll always find this: the time, the location, the date of the next annual shareholder meeting, okay? Do with that whatever you want. As a brother said in the front row, sometimes you want to show up. Sometimes you want to disrupt business as usual. Come on, folks, like these corporations, these CEOs, they have all types of information about us. They have all types of information about us. Why don't we know about them? Time to change that, right? Time to show up, right? We're going to be, not only are we looking for this, but we're going to be looking for their home addresses. Just as the quote in the other room said, the Utah Phillips quote says, "The planet isn't dying, it's being killed." And the people who are killing it have names and addresses. That's why. So we want their addresses, so come Christmas time, we can send them little Christmas cards, right?
Yeah.
Something like that. Something like that. No, we need to know who these people are. We cannot let them enjoy the comfort, the benefit of being anonymous when all this information is out there. There's no excuse for that. There is absolutely no excuse for that. So a few pages down, we get more information. So we get the agenda for the annual shareholder meeting. And this is what it looks like, okay? I'm not going to go into it right here, right now, but this is the type of information that's out there. So again, you can look at if it's, I don't know, if it's Caterpillar that you're looking up, if it's Boeing that you're looking up, if it's Starbucks that you're looking up, if it's UPS that you're looking up, you know, it's all out there. Just like this, they have a proxy statement as well. You know, they have the date and time and location of their annual shareholder meeting on their proxy, in their proxy statement within the first 3 pages. It's all the same. This information is out there and it's free. Y'all just saw it with your own eyes. It's just one Google search away. All right, so we're going to keep moving. Here's the table of contents. You can see board of directors information, and you can see some of the information that it offers on the board of directors, the biographical information that it offers. Y'all recognize that dude? Who dat? Mr. Bezos. All right, here's another one of those clowns. The president and CEO of Amazon, Andrew R. Jassy. Here's another one. General, retired, Keith B. Alexander. All right? And to the right, you can see some of their background and their quote-unquote expertise. I don't know what expertise a CEO has. I don't know what expertise a CEO has, really. Here, let's break it down. Let me pause there for a second because I'm getting all agitated. Let me pause there for a second. Like, what power do they have? I mean, look at us right here, right now, folks. Look at us right here, right now. Some of you have notebooks in front of you. Some of you have pens in front of you. What did it take to make that notebook? What did it take to make that pen? What did it take to make those tables that you have the notebooks and the pens on? The chairs that you're sitting on? The floors in this room? The walls? The ceiling? The heat? The electricity? What did it take for that? The roads that got you here? The car that got you here? Every single one of those screws in your car, worker made. Not CEOs, worker made. Y'all did this. Y'all did this. Y'all built this society. Y'all built this society, and you can manage it. You can run it. We've seen examples like that. Not for me. Don't take my word for it. I already told you. Seattle General Strike, railway strike. Like, this has already happened. We just have to keep it going. And at a time like this, when we have people like Donald Trump, people like Elon Musk trying to seize power, we need ideas like this, but we don't need them. They don't do anything. They have a parasitic relationship with the rest of us. We're the ones going into work every day, giving 40, 50, 60, 70, 80 hours of our lives per week, not seeing our kids, not going to their events, not showing up for family dinner because we're working. We're keeping society going. We're building society. What do the CEOs do? What do they do?
Well, he was head of NSA, which helps.
What do? They don't do anything. They don't do anything. So how come we don't know? How come we don't have more information on them? That's a shame. That's a shame. Especially as we're trying to figure some stuff out right now. You know, the Democratic Party just lost. Sorry, y'all. Sorry. I know some of you were hurt by that. But the Democratic Party just lost, and it's been radio silence ever since. It's been radio silence. There's no other ideas. There's no plan B. That's part of why I'm doing this right now. Okay, y'all are going to be quiet? I'll grab the microphone. You know, I got some ideas. You know, I'm going to bounce them off of you. You guys can take them home. You can brew on it. You can say, you know, Rick was on point. You can say Rick was full of shit. But I'm going to put some ideas out there. You know, because if it's radio silence, then make room for people who have an idea of how to create a better world. So that's why we're doing this, and that's why we're looking at these clowns. Back to the table of contents. You know, as you can see, the red arrow is pointing towards executive compensation. And another thing that these proxy statements always have is exactly what's highlighted right there, the summary compensation table, which breaks down the salary of different CEOs. Okay, there's the salary itself. Okay, that's the baseline salary. That's just, you know, what they get as a regular check. You know, there's other forms of compensation that they get, like stock awards. That's where the real money's at. All right, so if you're researching corporations and you see that, for instance, a CEO has received, let's just say, 1,000 shares of the corporation, you know, on top of a $200,000 salary. Those 1,000 shares, I mean, there's a reason they got that. Those 1,000 shares pay out. They pay dividends. All right, every 3 months, they get a check in the mail. For what? For what? For owning shares. That's what they quote unquote do. They own. They have stock certificates. All right? They have these certificates with gold stars on the bottom that say they own. That's it. That's what's holding all this together, folks. Come on now. That's what's holding all this together. You know, when I realized that, and that's actually in that movie, Finally Got the News. That's what taught me that. When I learned that, when I realized that, you know what? That is what's holding all that together. A piece of paper that says they own. That's it? Man, that's like total pulling the curtain on The Wizard of Oz. Sister, I'm going to be taking questions at the very end, if that's okay with you.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm also, so folks know, I am recording this tonight, and my plan is to go home and attach the audio recording to the slideshow so that y'all can listen to it again, share it, study it, whatever you need to do. So for that reason, I'm just going to ask for all questions and comments just to hold on until the very end. Is that cool, everyone? All right, cool. Thank you, everyone. So here's some more of the information on executive compensation here, other compensation. And if you'll notice, over here, you'll see a footnote. Over there, you'll see a footnote, and you'll see a footnote to a lot of those numbers. Read those footnotes. Read those footnotes. They tell you how they crunch those numbers. You know, if you're really getting deep into this, it's helpful to know that, and it also tells you where else they're getting money from. All right, there's the total, supposedly, but we haven't crunched the numbers on the dividends and stock shares and all that jazz, all right? But here's a summary compensation page. So to recap, the proxy statement contains the time, date, location of annual shareholder meetings, information on directors, and executive compensation. Those are the three main things that I recommend we take from the proxy statements, okay? There's more information, of course, but for the sake of this type of research, those are three of the first things that I would grab if I was you. Back to the investor relations page. Okay, this time we are going to look at the annual report to shareholders. And the annual report to shareholders is exactly what it says it is, and what I had mentioned previously. It's usually 1, 2, maybe even 300 pages long. It has a great deal of narrative. It has financial information, information on properties. Well, let's just get into it. Let's go ahead and click on it. So here we are. And I'm going to take a sip of this water because my mouth's getting dry. So this is what the Amazon annual report looks like. And this is the most recent one. So y'all know I didn't like skimp and just decide to take 2023. This is the most recent one. This is what's up right now. All right? So the annual report to shareholders includes a longer polished narrative, detailed financial information. Sometimes it's merged, it's combined with a 10K report. And the 10K report is what a corporation submits, again, to the Securities and Exchange Commission. It's very long. There's a great deal of information. There's a great deal of narrative. And sometimes corporations, for that reason, just merge it with the annual report because there's a lot of overlapping information, all right? Some corporations don't combine it with the annual report. And the difference between the annual report and the 10K form is that the corporation has more control over what information goes into the annual report. Okay, it's more polished. Okay, there's more bragging, which is important. There's more bragging. There's more bragging because you can take that bragging and you can incorporate it into your posts, into your flyers, into your information, into your agitational pieces, into your art. Like this stuff doesn't have to stay, dry and in print. No, this stuff can come out in your art. If you're an artist, if you're a musician, or any type of artist, you can incorporate it anywhere. So that's the difference between the 10K and the annual report, but both are very long documents with a great deal of information. Another note is do not read the annual report or the 10K report like a book. All right? No, don't. That's not meant to be read like a book. All right? What you're going to do instead is control F it. All right? Control is in find. Thank you. Control F as in find. Do people know how to do the control? Raise your hand if you don't know the control F function. Okay. A couple of people. Now you do. Now you do. Now you do. So what this does is help you find specific words or specific phrases within any document without having to read the whole thing. All right? So what kind of keywords do you want to find? Which keywords? Here's a list. All right? Now, you neither have to read, if you want to read these right now, come a little closer. I'm not scared of that. But again, I am recording this and I want to make it available online. But here's just some keywords to look up. Here, I'm going to read a handful of them so you kind of get the gist of what kind of words would be useful. All right, so agreement, as in collective bargaining agreement, boycott, legal, lawsuit, media, negative, strike, stoppage, shareholders, distribution, facilities, properties, or the names of nations, the names of locations, the names of CEOs, the names of raw materials. Those are some pretty key words to look for in the annual report and the 10K report, all right? Or whatever you're looking for. Only you know. So y'all can come up with your own, but I figured, this would help us get, the ball rolling a little bit. Back to the annual report, though. Okay, as I already mentioned, this annual report has been combined with the 10K report. So that's what we're looking at in this particular instance. And what we're looking at right here, right now, is the table of contents. And the first thing in the table of contents is item 1, business. Now, I do highly recommend y'all read this first section, business. It's very simple, it's very cut and dry, it's very to the point, but it tells you exactly what the corporation does and what's important to the corporation. And so I think it's important for us to know what is important for them. So I do highly recommend you read this first part of business. Again, I've highlighted some stuff. This will be available online, or at this point, y'all can just look this up yourselves. This is just one Google search away. Amazon Investor Relations. Y'all already know. All right, so I'll let y'all read some of this stuff on your own. But the business section contains information on consumers, on its customers. What's important to the corporation about its customers? I want to know. That's important to me if I'm about to take on this corporation. It's got information on the competition, It's got information on the workforce. Is it unionized? Is it not unionized? How many workers? At what facility? In this case, just highlighted one quick thing. As of December 31st, 2023, we employed approximately 1.5 million full-time and part-time employees. Okay? Maybe that's not the end-all, be-all of the information that we're looking for, but we're starting to get somewhere. We're starting to understand this corporation. Are all 1.5 million of these workers here in the U.S.? No. That gets us back to the international struggle, right? All right then. And stuff like this, again, as we strive to be the Earth's best employer. Yeah, take that and run with it. Humiliate them. They say shit like this. I'm embarrassed for you, man. Like, take this stuff and run with it. You're allowed to do that. This is public information. These are hard times. Put it out there. Put it out for workers to see the contradictions between how they're being treated in the shop floor and how they're talking about them in the annual report, which is coming directly from the horse's mouth. Take it. Grab that. Grab it, rabbit. LOL. Next thing we're looking at, item 1A in the annual report / 10K form is risk factors. Don't y'all want to know what the risk factors are for Amazon? Hello? Don't y'all want to know what the risk factors are for Amazon? Yeah, there you go. Me too. So let's go there. Let's read the risk factors. That's item 1A. You know, business and industry risks. We face intense competition. No, you don't, but let's read this anyway. Our international operations expose us to a number of risks. I want to know what those are. We want to know what those are. And there's some of them. There's some bullet points. Our supplier relationships subject us to a number of risks. I want to know what those are. I want to know what those risks are. I want to know what those risks are in case I and my fellow workers or my union can do some things to make those risks a reality for your corporation, to put pressure on you, to see those profits drop, to see the share value drop, until you sit down and negotiate at the very least. But again, I think we need to think bigger than that. I think we need to think bigger than the next big contract, y'all. Like, we need to build a new and better world from the shell of the old. And that's part of why we're getting this information. All right, back to the table of contents, rather, my apologies. Again, properties. In this case, here's just a little bit of information. All right, and I do have to say that in other annual reports and other 10K reports, there's a lot more information. This is just all that Amazon offered, but sometimes they get very, very detailed. Like, they'll come down to like the city level and how many workers work in one facility. So always check properties, especially if you're trying to connect the dots and trying to connect the dots internationally and trying to build some kind of international solidarity with another worker on the other side of the planet. So always check out properties. That's another thing I recommend. Over here, we got legal proceedings as item 3. All right. Now, legal proceedings here. This is very specific. These are legal proceedings that could potentially affect the value of the stock. Okay, so this isn't just any legal proceeding. This isn't like, you know, someone slipped at McDonald's and, you know, they're taking them to the people's court. You know, this is stuff that could affect the value of the stock, okay? But do we want to know about it? Yeah, there you go. Back to the table of contents again. All right, I'm going to pause it here kind of sort of because I already know what's coming next. My recommendation for financial information, if you are just getting started on this, my recommendation is finance.google.com. Okay? And tonight, we're going to keep it real simple. We're going to keep it to some stuff that I know y'all are familiar with. Raise your hand if you know what profits are. Come on, raise your hand. I know you know. Raise your hand if you know what revenues are. Revenues, really sales. Sales. If you know what sales are, raise your hand. Okay. All right. Does anyone in the room know what debt is? Oh, yeah. Raise your hands. Yeah. Exactly. So we're going to keep it real simple. Profits, revenues, and debt is mostly what we're going to focus on for this section, the financial section. Could we go a lot deeper? Yes, of course. But there's only so much time for this presentation, and I want to get through a lot. So, an easier way to look at the income statement, the balance sheet, and the cash flow statements. That's what finance.google.com is. Okay, and the income statement, the balance sheet, and the cash flow statements Those are the three main financial documents of any corporation, of any business. The income statement, the balance sheet, and the cash flow statement. All right, those are like the three pillars of financial reporting. All right, and I'm also a bookkeeper, if that comes in handy at all. So yes, I'm familiar with this stuff. So another note that I mentioned right at the bottom there is that Google Finance contains the same exact information as the annual report and the 10K report, but it's just easier to digest. It's easier to look at. And how do I know it contains the same exact information? Because I've cross-checked. I've wanted to make sure that when I go to Google, I'm getting the same exact information as the annual report, as the 10K report, and it is the same exact information. All right? So here, let's check this out. So what is in the income statement? Okay? Two things that I'd like to highlight. There's a lot more than all of this for each one of these documents, but I'm just going to highlight two things for each one just to get us all moving, just to get the ball rolling for all of us and to talk about things that we already know a little bit about. Okay, so the income statement contains revenues, and again, that's just another way of saying sales. And anytime you hear something like Tesla is a $500 billion corporation, Boeing is a $200 billion corporation, when you hear corporations being talked about in money terms and their size like that, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about revenues. That's the number that they're citing. So if you ever want to talk about a corporation and say it's a 5 billion, 10 billion, whatever billion-dollar corporation, you look at the number next to revenues. Profits is also in the income statement. It's usually at the very, 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 very bottom of the income statement. All right, and it's usually called net income. All right, net income is financialese. It's that financial jargon for profits. All right, and let me pause there for a second too, because when I got started on this, I felt like I had to prove myself. I felt like I had imposter syndrome, and I know some of y'all feel that. I know some of y'all been there. And so when I started with all of this, I went real deep. Like I studied income statements from top to bottom. I made sure to know what each and every single line on an income statement meant, on a balance statement meant, on a cash flow statement meant. All right? And what I learned from that was, of course, not just the information, but what I learned from that is that all of this is abstract and intangible information. It's abstract and intangible. So if you don't understand this stuff off the bat, that's not you, man. This is all abstract and intangible information. Listen, I learned what a stock was when I was 16 years old. We had a class in high school that just followed the stock market. That's the kind of education you get when you grow up on Long Island, I guess. We had a class that taught us how to follow the stock market, and they told us what a stock was. And I remember being like, okay. Like, that makes absolutely no sense. You own a piece of something, so you get all the benefits and the profits, even though you don't raise a finger in labor at this corporate. Okay, all right. And really, it wasn't until my 30s that it like sunk in and it started making sense. I'm not embarrassed by that. This is all abstract and intangible information. In the balance sheet, you'll find information on assets. All right, so the physical things the corporation owns. All right, this is another measurement of the size of a corporation. All right, assets. All right, and this information is particularly helpful when you're comparing it with other corporations. When you're comparing the size of the assets of one corporation to the other, it gives it a little more context and a little bit more life. The balance sheet also contains information on debt. It contains information on short-term debt and long-term debt. Short-term debt is debt that has to be paid within 12 months. Long-term debt, you have more time to pay for it. Obligations are like contracts and agreements that the corporation has entered into. So that's the second part of the balance sheet that I encourage you to look for. So assets and debt in the balance sheet. And finally, in the cash flow statement, the two things that I'd like to point out is how much a corporation has as far as cash in hand. And I think that's an important number to look at, especially if you're negotiating a contract and they're telling you, hey, man, we got no money. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. It's right there. You have it in cash. Cash is easy to move around. Why don't you put it on the table and meet the demands of the workers before we go on strike? So that's why that number is helpful. And cash flow also contains net income or profits. Okay? So those are the three documents that we're going to go through right now real quick. All right? When we go to financegoogle.com, same jazz. Put in Amazon. All right? And this is the page that appears. This is Amazon's Google Finance page. All right? You're already starting to see graphs and numbers and, I don't know, formulas and stuff. And so as the arrow is telling me, I'm going to go ahead and scroll down. And this is ultimately what you're looking for, all right, when you're looking for this information. So this is the income statement. Down here, you can see the balance sheet or a link to the balance sheet and a link to the cash flow statement. All right, so let's start here with the income statement. And pro tip here, always double check how you're looking at this information, because as you can clearly see, you can look at this information quarterly and you can look at this information annually, or spread out over a year or over a quarter of a year, which would be 3 months. All right, so you have the option of how you want to look at this information, but really pay attention to that. Actually, in all your research, always pay attention to the time frame that you are looking at, because you don't want to slip up and have someone call you out on some information that you just screwed up a little bit and didn't take proper consideration of the time frame. Okay, so here we have it. This is still the income statement, and we're looking at annual information now. Okay, and at the very, very top is the revenues. Okay, so it's telling us that it's $637.96 billion in sales, in revenues. Okay, so again, as I mentioned earlier, that's usually the numbers that's used to describe the size of a corporation. So now that we have that number in front of us, we can say Amazon reported $638 billion in sales for 2024, or we can say Amazon is a $638 billion corporation that pays its workers miserable wages, or whatever else you need to say about it. Okay? You move right along. Here's the net income. Again, profits. Now we can say Amazon reported $59 billion in profits for 2024. Okay? Pretty simple. Pro tip. What's this pro tip? Another useful measurement is net income from operations. That's right, Rick. Which tells us how much profit the corporation made from operations. In other words, these are profits made directly from the labor of the workforce, it's not profits made from interests and loans and stuff no, this is directly from operations, from the labor of the workers, all right? That's the profits that we're talking about when we talk about net income from operations, okay? This next graph shows revenues versus profits for the last 5 years. And you can click on each one of those years if you want to see information for that particular year, or if you have this divided up by quarters, you can click on each individual quarter and get information for that quarter. Okay? We're now moving on to the balance sheet. In the balance sheet, as I mentioned, you'll find total assets. Okay? Here, this balance sheet is telling us that the total assets for Amazon is $624.89 billion. So they have $625 billion in total assets. Okay? And again, I think that one of the best ways to look at this information is to compare it with someone else. So if you compare it with like Walmart, for instance, or Costco, for instance, or Sam's Club, it gives you more context and lets you know exactly, how big or small your corporation is. Okay, I touched some of that stuff, and now onto liabilities. Okay, so the total liabilities is the combined total debt and obligations for a corporation. In this case, Amazon is reporting that for 2024, it had $338.92 billion in liabilities, in debt and obligations, okay? So $339 billion, because we round off, usually when we're reporting on this stuff. And from this, we can say, again, $339 billion in total liabilities for 2024, or we can say Amazon is $339 billion in debt. Okay, I'm gonna keep moving here to the cash flow statement. All right, again, we're still looking at annual information. See, that's why I highlighted it every time, is for my own sake, so I could keep this presentation organized, but also to highlight it for y'all. Always pay attention to the time frame that you're looking at. Don't ever lose track of the time frame that you are looking at. You don't want to call it to question when you're presenting your research, okay? So, you know, the cash flow statement, as I had mentioned previously, also contains net income. Net income is profit, $59.2 billion, okay? And cash from operations, again, money made directly from the operations, from the labor of the workforce, okay? And in this case, it's $115.88 billion. So $116 billion is cash from operations for Amazon for 2024, okay? And now back to Google Finance. About this chart, okay. Do folks know what that chart is? Folks familiar with that chart at all? Okay, so, huh? Say?
Stock price?
Yeah, exactly. It's the price of the stock. That's all it is. It's the price of the stock over time, over a time period, okay? And if you can't see it, that says max, okay? And what that means is you want the maximum amount of information, the maximum amount of years shown in the presentation. And so I went ahead and clicked on it. All right, so now we're seeing information from the year 2000, actually a little earlier, they just didn't illustrate it. We're looking at information from the year 2000 to 2025. So we're looking at the stock price for the last 25 years, okay? And this is why I want to look at this information. When you scroll over the chart in Google Finance, so if we were live on the internet and we put our cursor over any part of this line, a number, a value, a price would show up, letting us know what the price of the stock was for that particular year or that particular day, really. So how can we use that to our advantage? I don't know. What is that? What happened there, Amazon? Why did it take such a dip? Why did it take such a big dip? That should be part of our research. Why did your stock price take such a big dip? What happened there? And if we're trying to put pressure on a corporation, is that something that the workers can recreate? Is that something that's within our power to control so that we can make your stock prices tumble? So you can give us sick days, so you can give us a living wage, so we can afford to pay our rent. We don't want to go there. There's a lot better stuff I know all of us would rather be doing than scratching our heads wondering how we can put pressure on a corporation. At least I'll speak for myself. There's a ton of other stuff I'd rather be doing than that. But this is the world we live in. So let's go ahead and learn a little bit about the corporation that we're trying to put pressure on. So what happened there? So researching what happened there, you know, that's like a Google search away, or, you know, easier research, just, you know, like magazine research, maybe New York Times, maybe Wall Street Journal, maybe Forbes, maybe Business Week, Money Magazine, excuse me, whatever the case may be. But that's where you can get information on what happens in instances like that. And I think it's really important to know what happens in instances like that. What makes the share value plummet? And is it within our control to make those conditions happen, to put pressure on a corporation? Okay, back to the investor relations page. You'll also find press releases and quarterly results on the investor relations page, all right? And those are handy for more current information, all right? The quarterly reports, as I already mentioned, those are released every 3 months. The press releases whenever necessary, but they certainly always release something every 3 months with financial updates. Okay, so if you want information that's more current than the annual report, than the 10K report, you may want to check out the quarterly reports that are posted here and the press releases. Okay, because you'll get more current information there. As far as the rest of the information on the investor relations page, I'm just going to encourage you to explore it. You know, here, just kind of keeping track of time here. Okay, about an hour and 20 minutes deep already. So yeah, that's why I'm going to encourage you to just explore it on your own. Okay. For those in the back, if you can't see the type of the additional information that's offered here, they're offering a link to frequently asked questions, offering a link to officers and directors, corporate governance, contact us and request documents, and events. Also, you know, as I mentioned previously, sometimes you want to know about a corporation's facilities, a corporation's properties, stuff like that. You know, it's good to look at these documents, kind of the additional documents on that. If you're looking for information where they're bragging, you know, for instance, where they're bragging about how great they are with the environment and how they'll be carbon free in 50 years when the planet has burned even more, you know, if you want like that kind of information, you know, check out the additional documents that are included in the investor relations page. And again, take this information and agitate with it. Educate, agitate, organize. Aren't those the 3 words in union organizing? Educate, agitate, organize. That's what we're doing. We're getting the information so we can educate, agitate, and organize. All right, so go ahead and explore the rest of what's in the investor relations page. All right, so that's part 1 of this presentation. All right, I guess one other thing that I would just recommend when I have been following corporations, you know, make sure you can sign up for any kind of news alert, either coming from the corporation itself or even Google. Google will send you a news alert. They'll send you news articles on whatever corporation you're looking at, you know. So if you want to sign up for that, that's also handy. It'll keep you up to date. In the second part of this presentation, and this is also the final part of the presentation, we're going to look at the Federal Elections Commission. People, raise your hand if you're familiar with the Federal Election Commission. Okay, all right, okay, that's a good amount. All right, now the reason it's important in this context is because we want to follow the money. We want to create a paper trail. We want to connect the dots. We want to follow the money. We want to see where these corporations are putting their money and where they get their money from. All right, so let's dive into that. Okay, so the Federal Elections Commission, the website is fec.gov, fec.gov. Okay, and another pro tip right there, if you're ever researching government, if you're ever researching government agencies or anything like that, the URL, the website name, should end in .gov for government, okay? That's how you know you're looking at something legit, you know? Otherwise, you know, you don't want to be getting information from I can't believe it's a Federal Elections Commission page.com. You know, you want to be, again, just like the corporation, you want to be getting it directly from the horse's mouth. So when you're researching government agencies, make sure that it has .gov at the end, usually, 99% of the time. And I say that it's 99% of the time because in Denver, we have denvergov.org. I don't know why, but always something to talk about when I do this type of presentation. So, but usually 9 times out of 10, a government agency website will end in .gov. That's how you know you're looking at a legitimate government agency. All right, so what are we gonna do on this page? So the first thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna click on campaign finance data, okay? And you get that drop-down menu. And the lower arrow is pointing at a link that says all data, all data. So you want to click on that too. Takes us to this page. Okay, and in this page, you can search by the name of the political action committee or by the individual's name. What is a political action committee? A political action committee is essentially a group that comes together so that they can track the money flowing through their campaign, flowing through their candidate. So basically, money can be tracked in politics. You create what's called a political action committee. And it's really not like an organization that meets or anything. It's more so like, you know, they agree on who's going to be the treasurer, who's going to do the financial reporting, and you know, that's the best use we have for political action committees, is that they track the money for us. That's what we need to know in this particular context. And again, you can look up information by plugging in the name of a PAC, of a political action committee. So for instance, Amazon's PAC, I forget what it's called, but we're going to get into it. I think it's just Amazon PAC or something like that. But all different groups have PACs. Corporations have PACs. Unions have political action committees. So SEIU, the Teamsters, Unite Here, you know, all of these unions have PACs. And I encourage you to look at that too. You know, especially if you're a union member. Where are your union dues going? Are they going to these worthless politicians who backstab us?
Yeah.
Wouldn't that money be better put in the strike fund
Yeah.
rather than the pockets of whack-ass politicians who don't pull through with anything? I think so. I think it's way more valuable to have money in the strike fund than to put it in some politician's pocket or towards some politician's campaign. All right, so we can search for information by searching political action committees and by searching for an individual's name. And we're gonna get into both. All right, so let's first search by committee name. All right, I plugged it in right there, Amazon. The name of the PAC, I stand corrected, is Amazon.com Services LLC Separate Segregated Fund, or Amazon PAC. I actually don't stand corrected. I was right all along. Whew. All right, so Amazon PAC is the name of the Amazon PAC. Very creative. All right, so let's see what they show us. So when you type in the name of a corporation, the first thing that comes up is this, the financial summary. Okay? And at the very top of the financial summary, you'll see it says total raised. So the total amount of money raised by this political action committee. Okay? That's what we're looking at. Well, that's what we're looking at the top of the financial summary. Okay? Now, when you want a detailed list of all the contributions that were made to this committee to raise money for this committee, you click there. And what it says next to it, for the folks in the back, what it says next to it is itemized individual contributions. All right, so you want to look at itemized individual contributions. All that itemized means is that it's very detailed. It's line by line. It's every single contribution individually listed. Okay, that's what itemized means. It goes into detail, line by line. Okay, so itemized individual contributions. And if you click on the number to the right of itemized individual contributions, you get more detail. And we'll get there in a second. I thought we were about to get to it in this next slide, but we're not. So hold that thought. If you scroll to the bottom of the financial summary, you'll see total money spent. Okay? So at the top of the financial summary, you'll get total money raised by the committee. At the bottom of the financial summary, you'll get total money spent by the political action committee. Okay? And if you want to know how the political action committee spent its money, you go to this line, contributions to other committees. Okay? That brings us back to what I was saying. You know, political actions committee, help us create a paper trail. Help us follow the money. okay? So if you want more information on what contributions this political action committee made to other committees, you click on that number to the right of contributions to other committees. All right, now we're going back to the top and we're getting on the subject of total money raised again, okay? And this time we are going to click on the number next to itemized individual contributions. So what we are about to look at is all the contributions made to the Amazon Political Action Committee, okay? And this is where it gets us, all right? This is the start of the list, and we're looking at what, maybe 10, 15 lines here? There's a total of 12,720 something, all right? But can't fit all of those in one screen, so this is what we're looking at for now. To the left, you'll see the name of the contributor to the Political Action Committee, you know, the person's name or the committee's name. You'll see what state that contributor resides in, the date of the contribution, and the amount of the contribution, all right? And again, the time period for the information that you're looking at. Very important, always very important. I can't stress it enough. I never, again, want to be called out for having the wrong time frame or speaking of the wrong time frame for the information that I've gathered, okay? And to the left, you have some search filters which help you sort out the information in greater detail, and we'll get to that in a little bit. Now, pro tip. See how it says amount there in that red box? If you click on that, it organizes the information. It organizes the contribution by size. Okay, so these are the largest contributions made to the Amazon Political Action Committee. And you can see it's all for $5,000, like this whole line. It's all for, so these are people making $5,000 contributions to the Political Action Committee for Amazon. And the largest contributions to a corporation's Political Action Committee are usually made by the corporation's executives, the directors, higher level managers, and some well-paid employees. Okay, so that's usually who makes these contributions. How do I know? Well, you see how I'm highlighting those little gray arrows there? What you do is you click on one of those little gray arrows and it takes you to this site, to this page. So your screen starts to look like that, right? So I clicked on that particular arrow that's highlighted and it opened up that side page that you're looking at there with a little bit more information on the contribution. Another very important thing to look at is that open image, okay? What happens when you open that image? Well, it opens up a PDF file that looks like this, okay? And it starts to give you a little bit more information, all right? In this particular case, it gives you the home address. Y'all hear that? Y'all hear that? Okay? It gives you the home address. Sometimes it gives you the home address. All right, I already did a little research on this address. This is a corporate address. All right, so sometimes they're cowards and they can't put their home address on the contributions that they make. Okay, but sometimes they're dumbasses and they put their home address on there. So you can send them, you can go do a little Christmas caroling during the holidays and pay your favorite CEO a little visit. All right, very important. If you're looking for the home addresses, that little process that we just did, that's the way to do it sometimes. It's not 100%, but it's one way, okay? Just like that Utah Phillips quote, Earth isn't dying, it's being killed, and the killers have names and addresses, okay? So that's what we're looking at there. Now, let's look at how the Amazon Political Action Committee distributes its money, how it gives away its money, who it gives away its money to. All right, so again, in this case, we're going to look at contributions to other committees, and we're going to click on that number to the right of where it says contributions to other committees. Okay, and that's what I did in this particular instance. And when you look at this information, those are the recipients of Amazon's contributions, okay? So I'll read some for the people in the back. One of the recipients is Pack for America. Another one is Nevadans for Stephen Hordsford, Friends of Lucy McBath, Case for Congress, Beatty for Congress, Nicole for New York. You know, that's the name of the political action committees of candidates who are running for office. All right, so that's who Amazon is giving its money to. Okay, those are the dates and the contribution amounts of those contributions. Okay, and again, the same pro tip. If you click on amount, it organizes it in size order. Now, what we have here is very interesting, isn't it? What we have here is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 contributions made by Amazon's Political Action Committee. All of these contributions are for $15,000 each. Every single one is for $15,000. And on top of that, they're all made on 2 separate dates, just 2 separate dates. And on top of that, what you're looking at in the recipient section is that they've given it to both Democrats and Republicans on the same exact date for the same exact amount. Huh? Curious, huh? Okay, interesting. Back to the FEC search page. This time around, we're going to look up another political action committee. This one is called WinRed. All right, and in preparing for today's presentation, I was trying to present on Trump's political action committee, but it didn't have much information. And I'll spare you my entire process, but what I found out was that WinRed was the political action committee that took the majority of the money, raised the majority of money to get Trump elected. Now again, this could have just as easily been Kamala Harris. I don't believe in this duopoly. I think we could do a lot better. So I just picked Trump, man. All right. So I plugged in WinRed, and let's see what that gets us. So let's see who contributed to the WinRed Political Action Committee. All right, I already shared the process as to how to look at this and where to click, so I'm going to move ahead a little bit, okay? So let's look at who contributed to the WinRed Political Action Committee. And again, as always, I like to look at the information by clicking on the amount. By clicking on amount there at the top, so it organizes the contributions in order, with the largest one being on top. So I went ahead and clicked on there. Look at the size of some of these contributions. $707,000, $500,000, $500,000, $413,000, $350,000, $300,000, $300,000. Okay, so now we're looking at the biggest contributions to the WinRed Political Action Committee. Okay, now let's narrow this information down a little bit so it becomes a little bit more relevant for us. Okay, I told you we would be using the filters, so that's what we're going to get into right now. We're going to look at those filters on the left-hand side. And again, it lets you filter out information in more detail. You can search by a person's name, you can search by a city, a zip code, occupation, employer, okay? And there's also image number, but I have no idea what that is, so I'm not going to talk about that. All right, so you can search through all these different methods. So let's see what CEOs have contributed to the WinRed Political Action Committee. Let's see which CEOs have contributed to the WinRed Political Action Committee. Because if you put CEO as an occupation, it's going to sort out all the people who identify as a CEO who contributed to a political action committee. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay. Now we have a list of contributions to WinRed by CEOs from the year 2023 to the year 2024. All right, so these are all CEOs who made these contributions now. Now we're looking at the information like that. Let's narrow it down even further. let's narrow it down even further. Let's look at CEOs in Madison. All right, so let's put, for the city, let's put Madison. So let's do that. Here's our new list. CEOs from cities named Madison, because there's more than one, and you see it in this list. So you get cities named, so now we're looking at CEOs from cities named Madison who contributed to the Win Red Political Action Committee, along with the amount and the contribution, with the amount of the contribution and the date. Okay, so that's the information we're looking at now. This is for 2023 and 2024. I forgot to mention that in the red text. All right, another way to look at this information, as I mentioned previously, is to search by individuals. Okay, so going back to the very, very first page of the Federal Elections Commission, where you can plug in information and start your search. This time, we're going to do an individual's name, okay? And in this case, I chose Elon Musk, okay? So let's see what, whoa, all right. And again, I had already organized it by amount, and look at that. 40 million, 30 million, 25 million, 25 million, 25 million, 20 million, 15 million, 14.7, 11, 10, 10, 7.9, 7.5, 7.5 million. You know, this is all Elon Musk. You can see his name on the left side of this screen. This is all Elon Musk. Okay, the FEC offers information on federal candidates. So we're talking about the president and members of Congress. And it offers information on federal campaigns, okay? But what if we want something more local? If we want information for Wisconsin, if we want information on the governor of Wisconsin and the governor's campaign contributions, on the campaign contributions to state legislators, then we go to the Secretary of State website. We don't go to the Federal Election Commission. We go to the Secretary of State website for that information, okay? If we want information even more localized, city council, town council, the mayor, we go to the clerk and recorder's office for that city, for that town, okay? And when we get there, we do the exact same thing as we did with the Federal Elections Commission. We look for a link that says campaign finances, okay? This is consistent across the board. This is consistent in the Federal Elections Commission, the Secretary of State, and the Clerk and Reporter. When you go to those websites looking for campaign contributions, you're going to look for a link that says campaign finances, all right? And that'll get you started. Oh, and I did a terrible job of finishing terrible job of finishing this, but nevertheless, I'll speak to this. A couple of resources I would recommend. I did not finish this, but a couple of resources I will recommend is Investopedia.com. Okay, if you ever need to get into the financial jargon and try to understand the financial jargon, Investopedia.com is it's like a glossary. It's like an online glossary of financial terms. Okay, so I recommend Investopedia.com for that. And I also recommend strategiccorporateresearch.org. Okay, they're also going to provide a bunch of the links that I've talked about here, and their own strategy for approaching corporate research. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.